They take 2,909,999.2. Really sell the computer thing. Channel. Inner you. As long as my ascot looks good. Oh, good morning, Kern County. iBike Radio is right in your face for a Monday, what are we, the 28th? Wow. Can you believe it? 28th of October, a couple days before Halloween. Scary. Woo! Well, welcome to the little program. Welcome to the little radio station. We are iBike Radio, brought to you, of course, by KSVG 89.7, Savage Radio. Radio for people who hate radio.
But like bikes.
And good music, not just repeater music, you know. Yeah. Hello, I'm Bob Generic, and I'm here to play you the generic hits. Ha 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 ha! Wasn't that a great generic hit? Man, that band was wonderful. They were out of blah, blah, blah. Ha 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 ha! It's awesome music, folks. We could do that, but, you know, we figure every other channel's already shoving that crap down your throat. Well, good morning. As you can tell, it's we wanted to let you feel that last song. Who was that?
I have no idea.
Lord, yeah, exactly. Lord Looney let the machine go on a rampant rage, and it just picked the long song. So we are getting to you a little late on the hour. It's about 9 after. In case you haven't stepped foot outside your door yet, it is blustery outside. Looks to me like we finally kind of hit fall. In the theoretical sense, we're not getting snowed on nor rained upon yet, but it's really a little cooler, probably 55 degrees. Winds have definitely picked up, and it's very dusty outside. So those of you commuting on your bicicletas or walking, just be careful and maybe take a look outside the front door. You might want to bring a kerchief or a scarf to put around your face so that you do not have to ingest as much of the, what would we call this, the pollinated asthma death winds. Sorry. What is the other one? What is the main, valley fever? Wow, I don't know how it slipped my mind. Yeah, so just kind of dress accordingly. If you're riding and, again, you don't want a little bit of the extra grit in your teeth or in your eyes, wear some clear lenses, wear something over your face. And for those of you who are commuting towards or from the east side on the bike path below the college, going towards Manor or from Manor towards the college, there is, at least from what I witnessed, a couple bottles broken just past the bridge there, which would be towards the east. So be careful. Of course, since it is blowing, there's going to be more debris on the roadway, so, be prepared out there. You may have to change a flat. It's that kind of season. It's been 170,000 million days since we've had water anyway, so things are dry. They'll blow easily. Yeah, well, it was a great weekend. The weather, those weather guys, they don't get it right around here. Well, it's not like they have a hard job around Bakersfield. What's it going to be like 300 days out of the year? About 70 plus degrees and clear. We really don't have a lot of work to do here in Bakersfield as a weatherman, in my opinion. But that being said, they have jobs and they're getting paid. And this weekend they They were definitely on point because they stated, get out there and enjoy the last wonderfully warm weekend of the year, which is nice since we've only got a couple more months or a month left in this year anyway. So 2 months left in this year anyway. So and it was quite a wonderful weekend. Those of you who were alive this weekend can attest to that. Good time to get outside. There were some good local things going on. Uh, Cycling and non-cycling related, I think, all over the county. People were getting outside. I know that the policemen's association is getting ready for a run next weekend, and I think there was at least one or two runs this last weekend. I know the 661 Fix group held Franken Smash 2013 yesterday, and I believe Zane Adamo, son of Felix Adamo, famed photographer, won both the geared and overall title. I believe I cannot remember this young. I want to say it's Arturo Guzman, but I'm probably completely wrong. A Hispanic young man with glasses and probably weighs $110, soaking wet. I think he won the fixed geared class. So hats off to all those people. Looks like a good time was had. All sorts of fun stuff, ripping around town on their bicycles. Looks also to me like, it looks like some folks got up to Fresno. Fresno does a really cool series for cyclocross. For those of you who don't know what cyclocross is, it's cyclocross bike is kind of a hybrid bike. It's in between. It's a road bike style bicycle that has knobby tires on it, and it is used to race on dirt in courses called cyclocross courses. However, they've become immensely popular as just great gravel grinder bikes. Gravel grinder referring to a style of riding where you go out and just kind of find yourself a nice long set of fire roads. A little inner Okie came out of me there. And so those bikes have become a little bit more popular in the day, as well as cyclocross has become quite a bit popular. But our local cyclocross crew, it looks like, got up to Fresno and had quite a good time. I think Glenn Imke, Randy Schroll, Chauncey Miz, Miguel Endurian, Miguel Berger, Cortland, anybody else I'm forgetting, Dustin, if anybody I forgot, Carlton from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was up there. I mean, Carl. Carl, and anyway, hats off to all those guys. I think Cortland got a win. I'm not sure the results for anybody else, but I can tell you everybody had a great time, and it looks like Fresno's homegrown series is growing quite a bit. I think that they had quite a large turnout, largest I think they've ever had. And if you ever get a chance to get up there, those guys are a blast to have a good time with, even if you don't race. And then I think Sunday, of course, I mentioned the 661 Fix guys had their Alley Cat on Sunday. But let's see what else. The Southern Sierra Fat Tire Association, I believe, had a mixer and barbecue and subsequent ride. And it looks like many people enjoyed the festivities. I saw a friend of mine, Dirk Bentz, and some of the people from the Brown Monkeys. Get down, Brown Monkey, get down. Goo, goo, goo. I don't know. They're the ones who name themselves the Brown Monkeys. If I can't go with it, then no one can go with it. But it looks like a lot of good stuff was happening this weekend. People were getting out, getting active. That's great. That's what we want to see. Not just talk about it, but be about it. Lead by example, man. So on to today's program. We're about quarter after. And one of the things I really look forward to discussing with you guys here on today's show is some of the week's events. I was, did I have a good time with my good friend from McKay Electric, Alan McKay, going and visiting and talking bike education and just ran into some of the most absurd hurdles that you would ever believe in your life. But nonetheless, we are undaunted and had a great time in the process. Can't wait to share with you that stuff. Oh, dang it. You're Wayne Rosenthal. You're right. I'm so sorry. I saw your name. I just got called out on it. Wayne Rosenthal, my good friend, longtime listener, great all-around cyclist, was also up in Fresno kicking butt for the Rita team. His partner in crime, Gareth Feldstein, had been down at the Spooky Cross the night before and had also, in case he's listening and gets mad at me and sends me a text, he also did a really good job this weekend. He did a really good job this weekend as well. I think he had a bad start and managed to pull himself back to a third in the Pro 1-2 race. So hats off to Gareth, hats off to Wayne, hats off to all the boys who got out there and raced their cyclocross bikes either Saturday or Sunday. Um, I'm going to kind of segue into, this is actually a perfect little segue because as I went to ride Sunday, maybe it was Saturday, I went to ride Saturday, I ran into a friend of mine on his cyclocross bike. And the story I kind of wanted to share with you that myself and Mr. McKay, we got to experience kind of ties in with this, and it has a little to do with cyclocross because the gentleman I saw was on his cyclocross bike, Mr. David Roos from Glenn and Giordano Physical Therapy, absolutely one of the finer physical therapy establishments in Bakersfield. Um, I'm a slight bit biased as I know, I've known Danny Giordano for very many years of my life. However, I'm probably also a little bit biased to Perrin Murata as well, since Mike Murata is a super, super nice dude and a longtime friend as well. So now that I got all that PC stuff out of the way, let me get on to what I was saying. David Roos ran into me, and he has been so generous enough to, along with some other cyclists here in town, to step forward and be willing to come forward and educate themselves on basic roadway etiquette through the League of American Cyclists, known as Basic Traffic Safety 101. It's an abbreviated course that I've been lucky enough to see created as a way to get people into the longer course, which is the TS 101 course, which is a 9-hour course. But nonetheless, David was part of the original discussion on how to get people involved. And as most people know, when you bring something new to a community, whatever it is, I mean, it takes a little while to get it saturated in, and you got to kind of find the core leaders, and and it's like vans, you name it, any trend that you can think of, Swatch watches. I mean, those things, they come on and then boom, all of a sudden they're there. So I wanted to bring bike education to our community, but I understand that there are always going to be hurdles to bringing anything new that hasn't been in place for a while. So I was gracious enough to been able to get, or David was gracious enough to allow me to entice him in and his family into being part of this first course. One of the issues I've been having is finding a central venue to hold the course. I thought initially that the bike shops would be the natural go-to place, as many of in fact, all of the essential customers or students would be bike shop customers. And subsequently, it would seem to me to make sense that it would, it would be a profitable endeavor for the bike shops. For whatever reason, I haven't had much response from that. I'm not giving up, but I was so in the desire to continue to try to find a nice, amiable place for us to hold a community oriented bike education course, I had approached the city of Bakersfield, as well as the county of Kern, through their Parks and Rec departments. And the county of Kern was just, in fact, I'm waiting to hear back from Brian Yankovic, who is, very excited about getting this program in their January or December program. So they embraced me with open arms. Whereas the city has been very confused. They know that it's kind of needed, but not really sure if anybody here in Bakersfield's really going to want anything like that because no one's done it before, and it reminds me kind of, I mean, it's silly as it sounds. It reminds me of the Field of Dreams thing. Of course, no one's going to come to the baseball field and watch the baseball players that you haven't built yet that aren't playing because there's not a baseball field. So obviously, you have to present it as an opportunity or an option for people to be able to be aware of it and therefore try it and then subsequently come to it if they like it. So I was amazed in a community that suffers, as absurdly as we do from pedestrian and cycling fatalities, um, not to mention auto crashes too. We rank real high on auto crashes because we've designed our infrastructure to just serve autos. But I would have thought that in a community that had such a problem with that, it would be of open arms, embraced with open arms, excuse me, by the city. And understanding that the city makes up the lion's share of, our metro area, of course, as well as they make up the lion's share of the overall pedestrian and cyclist fatalities and incidents in general. So, but no, that was not the case. I wasn't met with open arms. I was met with puzzling, double talk, and subsequently I haven't heard anything back. I've made a couple follow-up phone calls, and in fact, I put it in such terms that you tell me what kind of course would fit your need, and we will create it that way. So if you want a Tempest in a Teapot, we'll give you that. If you want if you want Dumbo standing upon a little teeny ball, we can do that. If you want pigs flying, we can do that. So I always kind of feel that if there's a problem, the biggest thing is we get it out, and then that way we can work on the problem, right? I mean, I'm not sure how else anyone else solves problems that they can't see or address, and subsequently, I think that's vital. So this kind of ties into the generosity and just the great forward thinking and the great community gesture that Mr. Roos threw out there. In reaching out, I've reached out, like I said, and I felt the city of Bakersfield was a good place to start for this particular group, as most of the people live within either the metro city area or the city itself. So since that wasn't working, I also reached back out to Bike Bakersfield, being that they're local Bakersfield advocacy group. And sadly, I spent over a month and a half, and I haven't heard anything back from them. I have myself and the other. Um, there are 3 or 4, I think, total LCIs in Kern County, but there are only 2 that are working, and that's myself and Brad Swanland. And so I know Brad, and whether it's 2 or 4, we can only do maybe 10 kids, maybe 13 people at one time in a class, and that's really pushing it. That actually takes kind of 2 people to do. I think 7 people for one person is a max to be able to truly do proper education, both in class and then on road. So, we have a double-edged sword here. We need to train more LCIs, but we also need to start to educate the public. So this process, even though it'll start slow, is so vital to getting people to feel safe that I'm just amazed that we again have been kind of blown off. I mean, I honestly feel very blown off by Bike Bakersfield, the city of Bakersfield, Public Works. A few of the council members feel like quite honestly, I had meetings set with 2 of them on Thursday or Friday, and haven't heard back on rescheduling on the other one, and had such a disturbing conversation with the downtown. What is he? I guess he's not. I'm sorry. He's a not a board of supervisors. He's a city council representative, and I was just so blown away by this ward. I believe it's Ward 1 representative for the downtown area, Mr. Maxwell, and his comments in regards to even acknowledging that there was an issue in pedestrian fatalities, it was mind-boggling. In fact, I was trying to explain to somebody I was trying to explain to him the amount of double talk, misrepresentation of fact, and just flat out opinion and conjecture and rhetoric was so great that it would be akin to the first time you heard Raw or Delirious by Eddie Murphy and you tried to tell one of your friends all the jokes. There's just no way that I could capture the amount of humor and flabbergastedness that I witnessed within this conversation, any more than I could convey to you, a Richard Pryor skit. I just don't. I just couldn't try. How do you do that? How do you redo a master? So, excuse me. I'm kicking out some of the valley fever in my throat. We're gonna do a station ID and sponsor break, but when we come back, we're gonna let a gentleman by the name of Jeff Speck, who is a urban planner and a civil engineer. He's gonna kind of do. We're going to listen to him talk a bit about some information that pertains to what I'm leading into this conversation of getting bike education available and why getting people used to and familiar and ready to embrace active transportation is so important to our community. And I also wanted to play it because I can bounce off a couple of the most ridiculous statements so that I can at least have something to bind it to when I try to make it nearly as funny as it was. But tying up on Mr. Roos was so kind because he listened to my frustrations with finding a venue, and he said, Zach, if you need a venue, Glenn and Giordano would be happy to offer you our venue. And I thought, man, that is super cool and very, very community oriented. And I understand, I just made me appreciate Mr. Roos and what they do there. So without further ado, we're going to cut away to pay some bills, and we'll be back right after this message on iBike Radio, brought to you by Savage FM.
Baco Skate Co. Bakersfield Skateboard Company, supplier of quality skateboard equipment, apparel, and service. Owned and operated by local skaters, proud supporter of the local arts, music, and skate scenes. Open late on first Fridays.
Terry Maxwell.
Friends include Santa Cruz, Creature,
I cannot tell you how much of a dumb shit.
Really? I can believe it. Yeah.
Let me plug this in. Well, Greg, he just said shit that was like so. I mean, like I said, dude, it's like an Eddie Murphy thing. Like I'd be in the shower and I go, oh my god, he did not fucking say that shit. Well, the problems with transportation and the obesity in the nation will be solved by the Google car.
Live bands, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. 324.
Aren't people fucking training their kids to ride bikes right now? What's wrong? Well, he has a stepson who's in jail for drinking and driving with his kids in the car. Yeah, they are. They're getting that education.
Oh my God.
Like your boy is. Like your boy was getting that education. You will fucking dickhead.
That's crazy.
It's just
Located at 120 Lake Street.
Holy shit.
McKay
Really?
Electric specializes in home, business, emergency generator installation and service. Authorized Generac dealer. 589-8335. Located at 10010 Rosedale Highway, number 12.
Alright, your mic's on.
The website is mecgenerators.com.
Don't forget to get with McKay Electric for all your electrical needs. Finest in electrical services in Kern County and possibly the entire universe. Happy Halloween. Well, welcome back to the program, iBike Radio, the Lone Wolf Howlin'. And, oh look, my wife wants me to call her and wake her up in a little bit. That's awful nice of you, honey. Watch out, folks. My wife's on the loose. Lone Wolf, back at you. It is about, 2 minutes after the half hour on the 28th here, getting ready for a wonderful Halloween. As I was going into break, I was discussing some of the frustrations and tribulations of bringing bike education here to the community of Kern, the county of Kern, the black hole of Kern. No, did I say that? It is not a black hole. It's just a void that sucks people back that they can never leave from. Sorry, I'm getting into the Halloween spirit. You know, and I was discussing sort of this conversation that myself and a concerned citizen, I had brought a concerned citizen, actually you just heard his company's commercial a minute ago, Alan McKay, excuse me, God, I'm going to shoot myself in the freaking foot. It's not a bird. Alan McKay from McKay Electric, I had brought him forward to meet Terry Maxwell, who is a council member for the city of Bakersfield, to address some concerns Mr. McKay was having in regards to bike safety on the roadways, and wanting to get behind my program. I kind of expressed to him some of my problems moving it forward, and so with that, he wanted to address the councilman himself and sort of see what he could do to maybe move him forward, or maybe share his experiences as just an average Joe who has come to cycling for fitness and then found the fun, seen it blossom through his family and through his friends, and seeing the actual peer relationship created, the positive peer pressure that is created from relationships that are positive. And what I mean by that is that you get a gentleman who has found a way to lose weight and have fun again on a bicycle. That feeling, that vibe is contagious. Other people see it. They want to know what you're doing, how you're doing it, and how did you get there. And pretty soon they're doing it, and they're enjoying it, and they're seeing it, and they're embracing it. So he wanted to share that. And without getting into too many of the details, as I mentioned, it's kind of hard to repeat something as comical as what I was listening to. One of the positives that we drew away from this conversation were simply this. Mr. Maxwell is definitely all about having our civic leaders engage in active transportation and support it, to the point where I believe he is going to lead a ride, or has offered to help us lead a ride sponsored by or engaged with the city and the city council members, including the mayor. We really appreciate that suggestion. We also understand that that the Google car is definitely going to be a major player in solving the transportation issues of the United States. Okay, that was a little tongue-in-cheek. But the positive is that we found someone who's willing to jump on a bike and engage in this active transportation leadership. And I think that there were some not so positives out of this conversation, but keeping with the positives, it was evident that many of our council members who are affluent, who make more than the majority of the people in Kern County, understand in Kern County, the largest portion of our community, roughly 45%, makes less than $27,000 a year. So when we are talking policy, and when we are talking, theoretical entertainment, recreation, we're talking public amenities, I think that if we fantasize about the Google car solving all of our health and transportation issues, we're probably not being very realistic in a community that has, the amount of poverty that we do. So, it's a great comment. However, I don't think it's based much in reality. So what was evident to me from this conversation is a lack of education on why we need to move away from just a single car concept, or a design concept within our infrastructure that's based upon the single car or the automobile, which realistically, folks, let's break it down. Most of the vehicle travel on a road is single occupancy vehicles. So knowing that, you have to understand that it's you and I who are making the most pollution right now. Businesses have been regulated pretty well. The transportation industry has been regulated pretty well. It's human behavior that needs to start to be modified. And you have to look at it as it's your duty as an American to step up and do your part to reduce the overall stress upon our economy. The roadway situation and the obesity health situation are killing us, and they are directly connected to our land use policies and our transportation policies. The past has caught up to us, and if we don't change it now, we will be doomed to repeat it. So what I'm going to play for you right now is a piece from Jeff Speck, and this is off of a TED Talk, but Jeff is no slouch, and Jeff is an urban planner as well as a civil engineer, and he's going to kind of discuss with you how planning for a community has changed, why it needs to change, and what are some of the indicators that they use to understand how those changes need to be placed and how they've come about. So without further ado here, let me start this bad girl off. Nope, I got nothing here.
You got to turn it up.
Oops. Here we go, folks. Still got nothing. Nothing in the headphones. 1 second, folks.
Hold on.
1 second.
We got
So,
we got it. Go.
City planner, an urban
Oop,
designer.
I'm going to back him up because he says his credentials here. All right, here's Jeff Speck. Thank you, folks. That's people clapping.
So I'm a city planner, an urban designer, former arts advocate, trained in architecture and art history. And I want to talk to you today not about design, but about America and how America can be more economically resilient, how America can be healthier, and how America can be more environmentally sustainable. And I realize this is a global forum, but I think I need to talk about America because there is a history, in some places, not all, of American ideas being appropriated, being emulated, for better or for worse, around the world. And the worst idea we've ever had is suburban sprawl. It's being emulated in many places as we speak. By suburban sprawl, I refer to the reorganization of the landscape and the creation of the landscape around the requirement of automobile use. That the automobile that was once an instrument of freedom has become a gas-belching, time-wasting, and life-threatening prosthetic device that many of us need most Americans, in fact, need just to live their daily lives. And there's an alternative. We say half the world is living in cities. Well, in America, not living in cities, for many of them, they're living in cities still where they're dependent on that automobile. And what I work for and to do is to make our cities more walkable. But I can't give design arguments for that will have as much impact as the arguments that I've learned from the economists, the epidemiologists, and the environmentalists. So these are the three arguments I'm going to give you quickly today. When I was growing up in the 70s, the typical American spent 1/10 of their income, American family, on transportation. Since then, we've doubled the number of roads in America, and we now spend 1/5 of our income on transportation. Working families, which are defined as earning between $20,000 and $50,000 a year in America, are spending more now on transportation than on housing, slightly more, because of this phenomenon called drive till you qualify, finding homes further and further and further from the city centers and from their jobs, so that they're locked in this 2, 3 hours, 4 hours a day of commuting. And these are the neighborhoods, for example, in the Central Valley of California, that weren't hurt when the housing bubble burst and when the price of gas went up.
All right, I'm going to pause it there just for a moment because I want you to, did you hear what he just mentioned? He just mentioned the Central Valley of California. So really key in right here because you live this. You guys have all lived this. I know it's personally affected me. I watched my house price go up to $265,000 and drop back below $100,000 in the blink of an eye. And was, I'm watching all this subprime stuff right now, and the Bank of America and the Fannie Mae stuff, and it just blows my mind. But listen to how when you create policy for land use and transportation use, you build in this failure by what he's talking about is urban sprawl. So by building in this concept of urban sprawl over the last 20 years, 10 years, 20 years actually, we have created this mess. And I like how he identifies the Central Valley specifically. So here you go.
Like California, that weren't hurt when the housing bubble burst and when the price of gas went up. They were decimated. And in fact, these are many of the half-vacant communities that you see today. Imagine putting everything you have into your mortgage, it goes underwater, and you have to pay twice as much for all the driving. So we know what it's done to our society and all the extra work we have to do to support our cars. What happens when a city decides it's going to set other priorities? And probably the best example we have here in America is Portland, Oregon. Portland made a bunch of decisions in the 1970s that began to distinguish it from almost every other American city. While most other cities were growing an undifferentiated spare tire of sprawl, they instituted an urban growth boundary. While most cities were reaming out their roads, removing parallel parking and trees in order to flow more traffic, they instituted a skinny streets program. And while most cities were investing in more roads and more highways, they actually invested in bicycling and in walking. And they spent $60 million on bike facilities, which seems like a lot of money, but it was spent over about 30 years, so $2 million a year. Not that much, and half the price of the one cloverleaf that they decided to rebuild in that city. These changes and others like them changed the way that Portlanders live. And their vehicle miles traveled per day, the amount that each person drives, actually peaked in 1996, has been dropping ever since. And they now drive 20% less than the rest of the country. The typical Portland citizen drives 4 miles less and 11 minutes less per day than they did before. The economist Joe Courtwright did the math, and he found out that those 4 miles plus those 11 minutes adds up to fully 3.5% of all income earned in the region. So if they're not spending that money on driving, and by the way, 85% of the money we spend on driving leaves the local economy. If they're not spending that money on driving.
Okay, did you guys hear that? I mean, there's so much here. Even going back to what I said about the decimation of the Central Valley, what I just loved that little bit there. What are they spending it upon? And let's listen to that really quick again.
Of all income earned in the region. So if they're not spending that money on driving, and by the way, 85% of the money we spend on driving leaves the local economy. If they're not spending that money on driving, what are they spending it on? Well, Portland is reputed to have the most roof racks per capita, the most independent bookstores per capita, the most strip clubs per capita. These are all exaggerations, slight exaggerations of a fundamental truth, which is Portlanders spend a lot more on recreation of all kinds than the rest of America. Actually, Oregonians spend more on alcohol than most other states, which may be a good thing or a bad thing, but it makes you glad they're driving less. But actually, they're spending most of it in their homes. And home investment is about as local an investment as you can get. But there's a whole other Portland story, which isn't part of this calculus, which is that young, educated people have been moving to Portland in droves. So that between the last 2 censuses, they had a 50% increase in college-educated millennials, which is 5 times what you saw anywhere else in the country, or I should say, of the national average. So, on the one hand, a city saves money for its residents by being more walkable and more bikeable. But on the other hand, it also is the cool kind of city that people want to be in these days. So the best economic strategy you can have as a city is not the old way of trying to attract corporations and trying to have a biotech cluster or a medical cluster or an aerospace cluster, but to become a place where people want to be. And millennials, certainly, these engines of entrepreneurship, 64% of whom decide first where they want to live, then they move there, then they look for a job, they will come to your city.
So I wanted to stop right there because again, that emphasizes what I mean about build it when they come. Millennials are a generation that right now the 20-something-year-olds. So that is the reason I wanted to bring that out is that I'm 40. I'll be 45 here pretty soon, and the people who sit in city council, with the exception of maybe one, actually most of the people who sit in city council are much. They're more older than me by 20 years, if not 15 to 20 years older than I am, if not more. You need to understand what they just said. It is not building cities is not about creating these little, clusters anymore. We already have the oil and ag industry. We obviously have a thriving $800 million sucking blood out of us medical industry that's able to feed off of our need or obesity. But we what are we going to grow in the future? And I think what he's stating is that if you create a community that attracts these kind of young people, they come there and then they will fill in the workmanship for the infrastructure. They will do these things. They will be your engineers. Again, I refer to what the Kern Economic Foundation's report stating that we are looking for and losing these engineer type millennials that this is talking about. So if we want to grow a crop here, if we want to bring up our farm team here, we have to invest here. And it doesn't mean pigeonholing people. You got to bring these young people in and let them do what they do and encourage them and watch them grow. It isn't going to be the same as what you did. It's if you're 75 years old or 60 years old, what a 20-something-year-old is doing is not the same as what you did. It isn't. It isn't. A 30-year-old is not the same as what you did. And the way they go at it and the process in which they think about that stuff is completely different, and which is okay. Divorce yourself from trying to manage their thought pattern for them. Let them do what they do. And I think that this is what is really important to me about what he emphasizes. If you want to build it, if you want them to come, you need to build it that way. And we know that all these indices point to the fact that if you build these kind of communities, then this kind of stuff will happen. So I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something here as a pawnbroker. It's just an idiot pawnbroker, son. But if my customers want blue Skittles, I would think I would want to go get blue Skittles.
The health argument is a scary one. You've probably heard part of this argument before. Again, back in the 70s, a lot's changed since then. Back in the 70s, 1 in 10 Americans was obese. Now 1 out of 3 Americans are obese. And the second third of the population is overweight. 25% of young men and 40% of young women are too heavy to enlist in our own military forces.
Crazy.
According to the Center for Disease Control, fully 1/3 of all children born after 2000 will get diabetes. We have the first generation of children in America who are predicted to live shorter lives than their parents. I believe that this American healthcare crisis that we've all heard about is a urban design crisis, and that the design of our cities lies in the cure. Because we've talked a long time about diet, and we know that diet impacts weight, and weight, of course, impacts health. But we've only started talking about inactivity, and how inactivity, born of our landscape, inactivity that comes from the fact that we live in a place where there's no longer any such thing as a useful walk, is driving our weight up. And we finally have the studies, one in Britain called Gluttony versus Sloth, that track weight against diet and track weight against inactivity, and found a much higher, stronger correlation between the latter two. Dr. James Levine, in this case the aptly named Mayo Clinic, put his test subjects in electronic underwear, held their diet steady, and then started pumping the calories in. Some people gained weight, some people didn't gain weight, expecting some metabolic or DNA factor at work. They were shocked to learn that the only difference between the subjects that they could figure out was the amount they were moving. And that in fact those who gained weight were sitting on average 2 hours more per day than those who didn't. So we have these studies that tie weight to inactivity, but even more, we now have studies that tie weight to where you live. Do you live in a more walkable city, or do you live in a less walkable city, or where in your city do you live? In In San Diego, they used Walk Score. Walk Score rates every address in America and soon the world in terms of how walkable it is. They used Walk Score to designate more walkable neighborhoods and less walkable neighborhoods. Well, guess what? If you lived in a more walkable neighborhood, you were 35% likely to be overweight. If you lived in a less walkable neighborhood, you were 60% likely to be overweight. So we have study after study now. It's tying where you live to your health. Particularly as in America, the biggest health crisis we have is this one that's stemming from environmental induced inactivity. And I learned a new word last week. They call these neighborhoods obesogeneric. I may have that wrong. Get the idea.
Obesogeneric.
That's one thing, of course. Briefly mentioning, we have an asthma epidemic in this country. You probably haven't thought that much about it.
Do we have an asthma epidemic here? Oh, wait a minute. Kern County is asthma central. Listen up, folks. He's talking about you.
14 Americans die each day from asthma. 3 times what it was in the 90s. And it's almost all coming from car exhaust. You know, American pollution does not come from factories anymore. It comes from tailpipes. And the amount that people are driving in your city, your urban VMT is a good prediction of the asthma problems in your city. And then finally, in terms of driving, there's the issue of the single largest killer of healthy adults. And one of the largest killers of all people is car crashes. And we take car crashes for granted. We figure it's a natural risk.
Single largest killer of healthy adults. Just so you digest that for a minute there.
Of being on the road. But in fact, here in America, 12 people out of every 100,000 die every year from car crashes. We're pretty safe here. Well, guess what? In England, it's 7 per 100,000. In Japan, it's 4 per 100,000. Do you know where it's 3 per 100,000? New York City. San Francisco, the same thing. Portland, the same thing. Oh, so cities make us safer because we're driving less. Tulsa, 14 per 100,000. Orlando, 20 per 100,000. It's not whether you're in the city or not. It's how is your city designed. Is it designed around cars or around people? Because if your city is designed around cars, it's really good at smashing them into each other. That's part of a much larger health argument. Finally, the environmental argument is fascinating because the environmentalists turned on a dime about 10 years ago. The environmental movement in America has historically been an anti-city movement, from Jefferson on. Cities are pestilential to the health, to the liberties, to the morals of man. If we continue to pile upon ourselves in cities as they do in Europe, we shall become as corrupt as they are in Europe and take to eating one another as they do there.
And they are
He
delicious
apparently had a sense of humor.
with croissants.
And then the American environmental movement has been a classically Arcadian movement to become more environmental. We move into the country, we commune with nature, we build suburbs.
I just sent you a text.
What that's right. The carbon mapping of America, where is the CO2 being emitted, for many years only hammered this argument in more strongly. If you look at any carbon map, because we map it per square mile, any carbon map of the U.S., it looks like a night sky satellite photo of the U.S. Hottest in the cities, cooler in the suburbs, dark, peaceful in the countryside. Until some economists said, you know, is that the right way to measure CO2? There are only so many people in this country at any given time, and we can choose to live where perhaps we'd have a lighter impact. And they said, let's measure CO2 per household. And when they did that, the maps just flipped. Coolest in the center city, warmer in the suburbs. And
Okay, so what he's saying there, in case, you know, again, this is a lot of wonking, as they call it. It's a lot of, he's getting into some of the technical talk. So what he's saying is that for a while, the theory was, and I understand this, that if you move back to the country, then you're doing your best to get back to the, but the problem is everybody likes that idea, but not really anybody's really willing to go out and move to the country. So what happens is we created urban sprawl, and that's kind of what he's getting at, is that the drive till you qualify concept is that you live far enough away from the center of your town that you can qualify for a house big enough for you to fit into the 2-car garage and the 2.5 kids and do this, you know, fantasy American dream thing. And what they found is that it isn't that you're moving to the country and then you just became a farmer and you don't ever go to the city, but every once in a while when you load up the horse and buggy, it's that you then turn around and you drive back and forth to the city center. So what you're doing is you're polluting all the way there. You come home, turn on all the lights, do all your crud. It takes extra power to get all that lighting and all that other stuff all the way out of the city center. So the amount of infrastructure to serve you so that you can live in this sort of fantasy land of, you know, suburbia or utopia or whatever he mentioned there, the fat land, has yielded this inactivity, this lethargic, you know, mentality within our culture that has led to this obesity issue that we have, which is a built-in byproduct of how we design land use. That's why I'm getting to the beginning of creating policy for our communities is land and transportation use. Those are the first two things that are set. So understanding that and how important it is, I know it's just bikes a lot of time, but what he's showing you here is by looking at the way in which we are using our resources, they realized, you know, taking the economist view as well as the urbanist view, and you were able to take a look and see, okay, well, if those people didn't live so far away and they had a community that was built in a denser area that served their needs and allowed them to have access to outdoor open spaces but were within walkable distances, then those things would allow them to put away their 40-mile-a-day commutes, which are what is killing us. It's the whether it's the gas use or the vehicle miles on the roads that we can't afford, or whether it's the health issues that are derived from just sitting on our asses that much every day. Those things are what have compiled up to crush us in this last recession. And I want everyone to understand, and I'm sure everyone who does live in Bakersfield and Kern County, being that 45% of us are below the $27,000 a year mark, we understand what happened in this greatest of recessions, the greatest recession and depression since the Great Depression that hit us. You know, I'm glad for all the people who are executives and white collar workers out there who this didn't affect. Maybe their 401k was dinked a bit, but there's a whole group of us that everything we had was jerked right out from underneath our feet. And the class above us done the same. So no one spending money in the economy, and it's because they're too busy choking on their own fat and their own transportation issues. So I'm going to let him finish up just a moment, and unfortunately we're going to wind up for the day because we love you and we want to tease you and have you come back and see us next week. But let me have him finish off here real quick on the walkable city concept.
Red hot in these ex-urban drive-to qualified neighborhoods. So a fundamental shift, and now you have environmentalists and economists like Ed Glazer saying, we are a destructive species. If you love nature, the best thing you can do is stay the heck away from it, move to a city, and the denser the better. And the more denser cities, like Manhattan, are the cities that perform the best. So the average Manhattanite is consuming gasoline at the rate the rest of the nation hasn't seen since the 20s. Consuming half of the electricity of Dallas. But of course, we can do better. Canadian cities, they consume half the gasoline of American cities.
So we'll end it right there. And essentially, as he was tying up there, is that that these economists and these engineers have really, and environmentalists have really realized that by planning our communities better to make them more walkable and bikeable, to give us the amenities that we need so that we can maintain our health through passive means. And that's like, you know, being forced to walk to school as a kid. Ooh, terrible. I mean, it really isn't terrible at all. It's actually good for us. And we've learned this by going away from that. And so getting those behaviors built into our infrastructure is key. So I'm going to tie this in with my frustration with my conversation with our civic leaders. If we don't have, and again, this is not an argued point, Mr. Maxwell would agree that we need to have leaders in our community that lead by example, not just talk the talk, but walk the walk. So knowing that what this gentleman just stated is all fact, and that we can go back to those particular points and argue them until our faces are blue, but those are all facts. Why are we so lethargic here in our community to address the fact that we do have a safety issue when it comes to pedestrian and bicyclists? And what's the hang up with the city of Bakersfield admitting to it so that we can go forward and create an answer. And what's the hang up with putting in place that answer? Those are questions that you guys as community members have to ask. Write letters to your local council person and ask them those questions. We're going to put together a petition through change.org, so look for that, and maybe you can help us as community or Kern County residents, help us find those answers. Want to thank you again to everybody. Again, Savage Radio at KSVG, our home, and all the hard work they do. Of course, it's radio for people who hate radio but love bicycles. And we're going to get on to our day. Thanks for listening again. It's been a great show. You've been a great audience. Don't go changing, baby.
From the creators of the chamber, a new form of terror. Scream in the dark. Enter the house they live in.
That was good. That guy's good. I like that guy.
Inside.
He's a smarty pants, huh?
Spine.